On behalf of the PA Department of Revenue Customer Experience Center, I'd like to welcome you to our annual training for legislative staff. My name is John Chrismer. I'm a supervisor in the Customer Experience Center. And today I'm going to be presenting with Alicia Gantz. Alicia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Like John mentioned, my name is Alicia Gantz. I am the chief of our Customer Outreach Relations and Engagement Division here in the Customer Experience Center. Basically, that means my area handles the outreach and education efforts provided by the department. All right, John, I'll hand it back over to you so you can get us started.
Thank you. All right, so my director, Don Bianchi, who has been speaking here for a while, he's going to join us today. He's going to be answering questions in chat when he can, but we'll also be answering questions at the end as well. We're going to cover a lot of information today, so we want you to ask questions if you have them. This is your time to find out new information and ask any questions that you have about the programs and information we're presenting. All right, so today we're going to go over some general information about the program, as well as what requirements an applicant or a claimant must meet in order to be eligible. Next, we'll talk about what steps you can take to help your constituents when they come into your offices. Then we'll talk about filing the PA 1000. This is going to include information on paper filing and the benefits of our new electronic filing option. Next, we'll go over some helpful tips on how to check your rebate status. And finally, we'll wrap up the presentation by discussing what resources are available to you. So we're going to kick this off with a brief overview of the program. So by definition, the property tax or rent rebate program is a program which presents rebates on property tax or rent paid in previous years by income eligible seniors and people with disabilities. The rebate program benefits eligible Pennsylvanians ages 65 and older, widows and widowers ages 50 and older, and people with disabilities ages 18 and older. In addition to claimants, spouses, personal representatives, or estates can also file the rebate claim on behalf of a claimant who lived at least one day in 2021, as long as they meet all other eligibility criteria. So the program itself is completely funded by the PA Lottery and Slots Gaming, so none of this is funded using taxpayer dollars. Since the program started back in 1971, it's paid out $7.1 billion in property tax and rent relief. As of 2021, this application can now be filed electronically. We do still have that option to paper file, but we strongly recommend taking advantage of that electronic option for several reasons, which we're going to discuss throughout this presentation. Claims are always due on June 30th, but the department has the option to extend that deadline until December 31st of each year if the funds are available. And if this happens, there's going to be a large press release and information will be advertised on our website. If a claimant files after that deadline, the claim will not be accepted. And our final note is that only one claim can be filed per household. So we recommend if there are two people in a household, they file under that claimant with the least amount of income. The claimant with the least amount of income is most likely to receive a higher rebate. Okay, now we're going to discuss eligibility so you can see who qualifies for this program and why. So before you complete the claim, you want to determine what category your constituent falls under. Category A is the age qualifier, so the claimant must be 65 years or older by December 31st of the claim year. This is the most common category that's selected. Category B should be used if that claimant is under 65, but their spouse is 65 or older. This category is the least common because typically if that person is 65, they're going to file as the primary claimant. Category C should be used by a widow or a widower who is anywhere between the ages of 50 and 64. And this category only applies if that couple was married at the time of the spouse's passing. And category D should be used if the claimant is 18 to 64 years old and they are permanently disabled. If your constituent does not fall under one of these categories, they do not qualify for the program. Now, if a claimant is a first-time filer, there are a number of proof documents that will need to be sent in depending on their filing category. And one of those documents is proof of age. We accept a wide range of documentation to vary age. If you look at the slide, there's some basic ones: the driver's license, birth certificate, passport. When someone is filing and they have to send in proof of age, once they send that information in, they shouldn't have to send it in the upcoming years. It's really a one thing that we ask them to verify. All right, if someone is filing on behalf of a widow or a widower, they'll need to provide the spouse's death certificate to verify that they were married at the time of the spouse's passing. If a claimant's filing is disabled, we'll ask for a copy of the disability award letter. So the award letter is a document that is issued to that claimant stating the date that they were deemed to be disabled. This letter should not be confused with that annual statement that is sent out to claimants or people who are receiving Social Security that shows how much they're going to be receiving monthly. That award letter is a one-time document that is issued normally around the time frame that they were deemed to be disabled. And if they don't have that award letter, they should contact the entity that deemed them to be disabled for a copy. And the last bullet point on this slide is the physician statement, which is a form that's included with the PA 1000 instruction booklet, and it's available on our website. The physician statement is typically used when a claimant is disabled, but they have not yet received their official award letter. So they'll need to take this statement to their physician to have it completed and signed, and then they would submit it with the claim. The physician statement is rarely used, and it won't be accepted if someone has already been denied by Social Security for disability. So if someone is denied by the Social Security Administration, they are not eligible to file for this program unless they qualify under another category. Okay, the next thing you need to determine is the rebate status. And rebate status simply means what type of rebate are you claiming? Are you filing the rebate for a property taxes paid, or are you filing for rent paid? And in addition to identifying what category an applicant falls under, we also need to know if they're a property owner, a renter, or if they are an owner renter, because this is going to affect their eligibility income level. And we're going to define what each one of these statuses means. So in order to be considered a property owner, that claimant must meet three requirements. First, the claimant must have owned the home, which typically means they would have a deed, a will, or some type of life estate to verify ownership. They must have also occupied that home. So for example, if someone lived in a property for only half of the year, they could only claim the rebate for the time that they actually occupied that residence. And three, taxes must have been paid for the claim year. So if that claimant is filing for 2021, the taxes must have been paid for 2021. And as long as that claimant owns that home, we don't care who pays the taxes for them. So if I'm paying the taxes for my parents on their property, but they still actually own the home, they can still file. So in order to be considered a renter, that claimant must have rented, occupied a home, apartment, nursing home, boarding home, or some similar residence in PA during the claim year. That renter must have also had their own self-contained unit, which would include its own separate kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom. Single rooms can be acceptable in some situations, such as a boarding home, a nursing home, or an assisted living facility. The claimant must have also had a true landlord-tenant relationship, which is typically going to be established by a lease or some type of written agreement between the landlord and that tenant. So this means if someone is renting to their family member, there must be some type of written agreement to confirm that that arrangement exists. The landlord must have also paid real estate taxes for the claim year or made a payment in lieu thereof. If that landlord is a tax-exempt entity and it's not required to pay taxes, the claimant would not qualify. And the last point we need to discuss on this slide is cash public assistance, which is a form of financial assistance that's granted to some renters. Right? If a claimant receives cash public assistance for the entire year, they would not qualify for this program. Now, if they receive cash public assistance for a portion of the year, they would have to complete the Schedule D with their claim form to determine what portion of the rent that they're allowed to claim. And the next thing we're going to look at is when someone would qualify as an owner-renter. And there's a number of scenarios where this could happen. The first scenario would be the claimant owned a home for part of the year and rented a property for a part of the year. So if someone owned a home for part of the year, they would have to complete the Schedule A. And the Schedule A would allow that claimant to calculate the portion of the property taxes paid during the time that they lived at that home. And they would also have to complete the rent certificate. And we'll talk about the rent certificate a little bit later. It has to be completed for all renters. The second scenario, and the most common scenario for an owner-renter, is when a claimant owns a mobile home and rents the lot, or vice versa. In this situation, they'd be required to provide proof of taxes paid and a completed rent certificate. It's also important to point out that you can only file as an owner-renter if someone's income is less than $15,000, and we're going to get into that on the next few slides. So now we're going to discuss income. So when you're looking at income thresholds, you have to consider what we call household income. And household income is the total income that is earned by a claimant and the spouse if they're residing together. Income from a roommate or a minor child should not be included in this calculation. And the maximum income amount is going to differ for those who are homeowners versus those who are renters or owner-renters for the year. Property owners can make up to a maximum of $35,000 a year, while renters or owner-renters can make up to a maximum of $15,000 after the appropriate deductions. There will be certain lines of income that will be excluded or reduced when calculating the total household income. So for example, if you look at the bottom of this slide, it states that claimants can exclude half of Social Security or Railroad Retirement Tier 1 income and take a deduction for federal civil service system income. Now, if you're electronically filing, these figures will automatically be reduced. All right. So if you're paper filing, it's something you'll have to be conscious of, but we're going to show you later how this new system actually makes these reductions for you. So you can see on this slide how the income that you report will affect the amount of rebate that you can receive. The rebate's going to vary depending on that total household income for the year. And again, you can see that homeowners or property owners can make up to a maximum of $35,000 and renters can make up to $15,000. So we mentioned that there is an option to file a rebate on behalf of a deceased claimant who lived at least one day in 2021 and meets all other eligibility criteria. And that's what we're going to discuss next. So there's three different groups of people that could potentially file on behalf of a decedent. And the first one is the surviving spouse. But before that surviving spouse files on behalf of a decedent, they should determine if they can file on their own. If they qualify to file on their own, they should file under their own Social Security number and then list that deceased spouse as the secondary on the claim form. If the surviving spouse does not qualify, they should file under the decedent's Social Security number, provide the death certificate, and then they should sign the claim as the surviving spouse. The second group that can file is an estate. So an estate can file on behalf of a decedent. They just need to provide different documentation, depending on whether or not there is a will. So if there is a will, we would need a short certificate showing who the executor or the executrix is. And if there isn't a will, we would need a decree of distribution or a court order appointing the administrator. And finally, a personal representative. So a personal rep is the person who paid for the funeral. They would need to provide receipted copies of the bill to file on behalf of that decedent. They should also send in proof that they directly paid for the funeral expenses. So this could be proof of payment, like a front and back of a check, or a credit card statement, or some type of bank statement showing that they're the ones who directly paid for those funeral expenses. So in addition to the PA 1000, you'll need to complete the DEX-41, which is an application or a refund or rebate due to a decedent. And you also potentially need to file the Schedule A and the Schedule G. The Schedule A, which I did mention earlier, is used to prorate taxes paid, which you would use if a claimant only lived for a portion of the year. That Schedule G would be used to annualize income. So we annualize income to determine how much that claimant would have earned if they actually lived the entire year. And this is used to eliminate claims where someone would not have qualified for that program if they would have survived. Now, if you're filing electronically in MyPath, you'll be asked if you're filing on behalf of a decedent, and the portal will automatically prompt you to fill out the appropriate schedules, and it will ask for supporting documentation to be attached. And again, we ask that you keep in mind that the claimant must have been alive for at least one day out of the year. And additionally, you can only claim the amount of rent or taxes paid during the time that claimant was alive and occupied that property. All right, now we're going to talk about the supplemental rebate. Now, you're not going to find any information on the supplemental rebate in the PA 1000 instruction booklet or even in the DFO. In order to qualify for this rebate, that claimant would have to fall under one of two categories. First, you would have to be a property owner who makes less than $30,000 and lives in Pittsburgh, Scranton, or Philadelphia. Second, you could file for this, or you would qualify for this if you were a property owner who made less than $30,000 and you had a high tax burden, which means that the taxes would be 15% or more of the total income. So our system automatically calculates the supplemental rebate. Um, if a claimant qualifies under either one of these categories, they will automatically receive that additional rebate. And if you look at the slide here, you'll notice that that supplemental rebate is half of the maximum standard rebate. All right, I'm going to hand it off to Alicia.
All right, thank you, John. Before I move on to the next section, are there any questions about what this or the content that John just went over? I know that Don has been answering a lot of them in the chat. All right, so I don't see any hand. Oh, there's a hand. Looks like Joanna Bortz.
Thank you. It might have been answered in the chat, but I saw the category chart for income eligibility said a owner renter could make up to 15,000. Is that what you're verifying?
Correct.
The
Yeah,
paper
so
application in the book, did that change? The paper application book says to see table A, which made them eligible like owners up to 35,000.
so you would only qualify as an owner and a renter if your income was less than 15. What would happen is if you were filling it out by paper, you would fill out both areas, but you would only qualify to file for the owner portion if your income was over that $15,000 mark. And if you file electronically, it will take care of all of this for you, actually. So once you calculate your income, it would just assign whatever you are when you enter the income amount.
Thank you.
All right. So if there's no more questions, I'm going, oh, looks like Angela Jones might have one. And I think she typed it into chat, John. So it says, do the property taxes need to be paid in full or at least the amount of their rebate back?
Good question. So let's say that you have, and we're going to go over this a little bit later, but let's say you have school taxes and township taxes, but you've only paid school taxes. All right, so you send in your school tax bill. As long as that bill is paid, we will give you credit for that on the rebate. So yes, you could have something partially paid off. As long as there is proof of that payment amount, you could still qualify for whatever portion was paid.
Right, we can take one more from Teresa Hall before we move on.
Just a quick question. I put it in the chat. Do the taxes need to be paid in the claim year? If someone is delinquent and they pay their taxes in March, will we still accept that for the claim year?
Great question. Yes, we will. Yeah, so as you know, you have up to December 31st. Well, if the deadline is extended, you have up until December 31st the following year to file. So if you file at the end of the year and it takes you a little bit of additional time, as long as they're paid by the time you file and you're filing within that deadline period, it would still be accepted.
All right. Thank you, John. All right, so I'm going to talk to you all about how you can help your constituents and what resources we have provided to make your lives easier. So we gave a bunch of handouts to be updated and added to the Office of Legislative Affairs webpage, but we'll also be sending out attachments after the presentation. All right. So the first thing I want to point out is the REV 573. This is the green handout that you see here on the screen. This was created as a quick informational flyer that summarizes the program for your constituents rather than handing them the entire seminar or the entire booklet and expecting them to understand it. Similar to what John just did, the handout provides an overview of the program. This includes who can file for a property tax or rent rebate, when the deadline is to apply, and some information on different proof documents that will be accepted. The DPO 87, which is the navy blue handout on the screen, covers a little bit more about using our new MyPath portal, which we'll talk about in more detail in a few minutes. MyPath is definitely the fastest and most effective way to get the PTRR application into our system. In addition, this system is free and it has automatic calculators built in to help reduce errors. You can also use MyPath to check your rebate status and respond to notices as well. And then the rest of the flyer gives you information on the program itself. The next way that you can help your constituents, if they're interested in applying, is to give them a copy of the PTRR proof document checklist. So this checklist is 3 pages and it tells you what type of documents the department will accept based on what you are reporting. So page 1 focuses on what you will need if you are a first-time filer. Again, first-time filers need to submit proof of age and/or disability. Page 2 focuses on whether you are an owner or a renter and what is considered acceptable proof of rent paid or taxes paid. And then page 3 focuses on items to send in based on the types of income that you're reporting. So if you know that you have someone coming in your office, maybe you could send them this checklist in advance to ensure that they're prepared to answer your questions and guarantee that they can bring the appropriate documentation with them because that is needed upon filing. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the PTRR Quick Tips handout. So this one here is more for you. Again, we talk about the eligibility requirements, the maximum rebate, amounts based on the income. We include a property tax rent rebate calendar of events, so you know when the filing season opens, around when processing will begin, when rebates generally start being mailed, and then when the deadline is. We include information on paper filing and using the address label only if nothing has changed. So if they have updated their address, definitely don't use that label. That's followed by what schedules need to be completed based on the income being reported and in what order you should complete those schedules. We also include information on electronic filing and what to do if you received a notice, checking your rebate status, and then finally, information on the supplemental rebate amounts and resources should you have any questions. So this handout here is basically a summary of our entire presentation today. Hopefully, if you forget anything that you learned, you can flip to this handout and it will refresh your memory. All right, so now let's talk about actually filing the PA 1000. I believe that currently your offices are filing the paper application and then they send them to our Office of Legislative Affairs within the Department of Revenue. From there, the information is sent to our Bureau of Imaging and Document Management, where it is scanned and put into our system. So as you can imagine, that handoff can be time consuming and it can cause delays in actually processing the application. If you are a person who wants to apply via paper form, there are several ways to obtain the forms that you need. First and foremost, if a claimant filed a property tax rent rebate application in the previous year and was approved, they will automatically receive a PTRR booklet in the mail. As I mentioned, this mailing also includes an address label that will help speed up the processing of their application. Again, we ask that you only use the label if all of the information is still correct. So if you're talking to a constituent, ask them if they applied previously and then have them bring that booklet that they received with them. So that way you can use that when completing their forms. You can also download forms from the Department of Revenue's website, which is revenue.pa.gov. If you're doing this, we recommend that you fill in the actual PDF on the computer and then print it out because it'll make it easier for our equipment to scan, which will help speed up processing. If for some reason you don't have access to a computer, you can still order forms to be mailed to you by calling 1-888-PA-TAXES. And then once the paper application is completed, it should be mailed to the address that's listed on the screen here. This address is also listed in the instruction booklet as well as our website. In addition, I'd like to mention that new to 2021, the property tax rent rebate instruction booklet is now available in Spanish. The form itself is not translated at this time, but the actual instruction booklet is. So if you have any Spanish speaking constituents, you can always direct them to that instruction booklet as well. For those of you who do like filing via paper, we want to go over some common errors to avoid. Some of these might seem obvious, but we see a lot of these issues on a daily basis, so we do want to mention it when possible. The first bullet point here, all paper applications must be signed and the handwriting must be clear. A common issue that we find is poorly written addresses. If an address is unable to be verified or it is miskeyed due to poor legibility, processing delays will occur. This is one of the reasons that we keep encouraging using the new electronic feature. MyPath verifies all addresses against the United States Postal Service data, which helps to avoid issues with invalid addresses. The next item here is that all the appropriate lines should be completed on both pages of the PA 1000 and all supporting documentation should be attached. If lines are missed, the return will suspend. If you do not send in the necessary documentation, then we'll need to request that and there will be delays in processing. So we'd like to avoid that if we can. The next error here has to do with software generated forms. So it is important to understand that MyPath is the only way to file electronically for this program. However, some software providers offer the ability to fill out the PA 1000 online and then print it out for your constituents to mail in. We have noticed occasional issues where the software doesn't get updated with all of the department's forms changes, and therefore information is not data captured correctly. For example, if you're dealing with a spouse, an estate, or a personal representative who wants to file on behalf of a decedent, they need to ensure that they're marking or filling in the filing on behalf of a decedent oval. That's under section 2, answer number 3 of the PA 1000 form. So you should be able to see that here on the slide. Sorry, this oval here has changed over the years. So whereas the actual location of the oval has remained the same, the context that goes with it has changed. Back in 2014, the oval was changed to the deceased claimant indicator, but it appears that some vendors are still populating the oval based on the previous question, which was, have you received a property tax rent rebate in the past? So I'm not sure if this is something that will apply to your group, but if you do use a software provider and you happen to notice this, please contact them to have the field corrected. And then the last thing that we have on the slide here is to avoid sending in original documents. Please do not send original documents to the department. It is impossible for us to return them. The individuals who are opening the mail are not looking to see if the documents are originals or copies, and eventually they will be destroyed. Again, a lot of this might seem like common sense, but we see it often enough to bring it to your attention. All right, so now let's talk about electronic filing. I've hinted a lot about the new system, but let's talk about why it is so great. As some of you might be aware, the Department of Revenue is currently in the middle of a tax system modernization project. This is being rolled out in several different phases. Part of the modernization project is to enhance our current electronic self-service options that are available to our customers. To do this, the department has launched a new external portal called MyPath, which stands for My Pennsylvania Tax Hub. In November of 2020, the property tax or rent rebate program was integrated into this new system. And one of the most exciting features with that integration was the ability to electronically file the PA 1000 or property tax rent rebate application. As I mentioned previously, MyPath is the only way to electronically file this form. It is not available through any other software providers at this time. So to access the portal, you simply type in MyPath, mypath.pa.gov, and you'll be taken directly to the home page. So this slide here shows you an image of what the MyPath homepage looks like. There are a few things that I want to point out to you. First of all, you can see that there are several different tiles that are broken down by categories. Within those tiles, there are hyperlinks to perform different functions. Anything that you see here on the homepage does not require you to create an account to utilize those features. Everything that we're going to talk about today in regards to the electronic options is available on the homepage without the need to create a user ID or password. So that can be confusing to some people, but again, you don't need to actually log in. Just go right to the homepage and click the hyperlink for the action that you want to perform. The next thing I want to point out is that customers see this black box in the top right-hand corner. They tend to stop right there, and I can see why. If they're using a cell phone or an iPad to navigate, it is the first thing that you see. So they'll get to that black box and then they'll say, like, I don't see that tile that you were referencing. Just want to make sure that you keep scrolling until you do see those tiles. Again, it sounds silly, but it is a common mistake. We get a lot of phone calls about that. All right, so to begin actually filing your application, you'll click on the Apply for a Property Tax Rent Rebate under the Rebates tile. MyPath can only be used to file claims for the current period. So you'll see here that it says Apply for a Property Tax or Rent Rebate for 2021. If claimants choose to use this option, they will need to upload attachments right along with their application, such as that proof of age and/or disability that we talked about earlier. This screen here on the slide is the first thing that you'll see once you select that apply for a property tax or rent rebate. You can see that it outlines what is possibly needed before you even begin. And then there's a disclaimer stating if your attachments are not able to be electronically uploaded with your application, you will need to file a paper application. So we do accept many different file types. I personally recommend PDF attachments. Oftentimes people will ask how to get the documents to their desktop. We normally suggest that you just take a picture with your cell phone and you send an email to yourself. Then you can create a file or simply label it in a way that you can easily recognize what you're looking for. Once you've selected Next on the introduction page, you'll be taken through a series of questions. This software is very intuitive, so based on how you answer those questions, that will determine what schedules are populated to be completed. Therefore, you don't actually have to know that information. This page will also stop the claimant from moving forward if they do not fall under one of the qualifying categories. So in our example here, we're going to file a claim as a property owner that is over the age of 65. So yes, we are a first-time filer. Yes, this is being filed by a preparer. No, we're not the power of attorney. No, we don't have more than one home. No, the home is not used for other purposes. No, we are not filing on behalf of a decedent. And no, there are not additional names on the deed or lease. So basically, by answering the first series of questions, we just completed section 2 of the PA 1000, which is the filing status categories. From there, the program will start to ask questions about income. So you would simply key in the appropriate amount of income for each category. You can see in our example that we entered $4,788 in Social Security income. And then once you get through the other income section, you can see that it calculates the total income for you. So again, in our example, the total income is automatically calculated and the system knew to reduce it to $2,394 because it knew to split that Social Security income in half. Once the amount of taxes entered, the rebate amount is automatically calculated and populated. If you take a look at the navigational bar at the top of the application, this is present throughout the entire application. Sorry, I thought we were going to highlight the navigational bar, but maybe not. I think you all can see it there. It's where it says questions, primary income, other income. So this is present throughout the entire application process. You can use this bar to navigate to the other sections if you have to go back, or you can simply use the previous and next arrows to navigate through the system. Once you have passed the rebate section, you'll enter the personal information for the claimant. So again, this is basically section 1 of the physical PA 1000. One area that I want to bring your attention to is this verify address button. This must be selected for each transaction which it's present. So if you see this blue bar that says verify address, you want to make sure that you click it. This is just confirming that that address is in compliance with the U.S. Postal Service standards, or it is recognized as a valid address in their system. And then lastly, you will select whether the rebate should be direct deposited or not. All right, and then this screen here just shows that address validation that I just mentioned. You can see that in our example, we entered the address as 393 Walnut Street, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 17128. But the United States Postal Service is saying it should be 393 Walnut Street, Harrisburg, PA, 17128, with the last four of the zip code being 2005. So again, if you see this box, simply select the correct one and then click Save. Remember, if you are helping a repeat filer, they should have received a letter or a booklet from the department. So if their information has not changed, we recommend that you just type in the address that was listed on the label, and you shouldn't have any issues going forward. All right, so if you choose direct deposit for the rebate, which I strongly recommend, you'll be taken to a screen like this. At this point, you just select whether you'll be using a checking or a savings account. You'll enter the account number and enter your routing number. If the routing number is properly inputted into the system, the bank name should populate, and then you'll be asked to confirm your account number. So all of this is done in an effort to ensure that nothing is miskeyed and the rebate goes into the correct account. All right, so the next step would be uploading the attachments. Again, we were warned at the beginning of this that they were required as part of the electronic application. So based on how you or your constituent answered the questions, MyPath will tell you what documents are required. You'll then click Add. And then select the files from your computer. The system will ask you to select what type of attachment that you're about to upload from the list of required documents. You will choose the appropriate proof document and enter the description of the document. Then you'll simply select Choose File and navigate to the file on your desktop. And finally, you'll click OK to move to the next item. So once that's successfully uploaded, you'll be able to confirm and move to the next proof document. You can see on the screen that there is an option to remove if you accidentally selected the wrong file or it labeled it incorrectly. Again, just another way to ensure that you're doing everything correctly. And then you'll repeat those steps for each additional file that you have. And finally, click Next to continue through the application. All right, so before the application can be finalized, you'll need to complete the claimant oath by entering the preparer's name and phone number. You'll click Next to move to the application summary. Just a reminder, if you are filing a claim on behalf of a claimant, list yourself as the preparer. If you would call into the Customer Experience Center, we'll be able to speak to you without a power of attorney or your constituent needing to be present. Right, then you'll want to make sure that you review the rebate summary before submitting the application. Once you click submit, you'll receive a confirmation that requires you to acknowledge that the information you submitted is true, complete, and accurate to the best of your ability. After the confirmation is completed, you'll receive a confirmation screen that includes your submission information. If you want to keep track of the applications that you are completing, we recommend that you hang on to this confirmation code. You can even keep it in a log in Excel spreadsheet, along with all of the other confirmation codes for your other constituents. The confirmation information will also be mailed to the email address that was entered. Just keep in mind, if you are using the same email, like say you're using your email to prepare applications on behalf of several constituents, this email doesn't give you any identifying information as far as what constituent that belongs to. So again, tracking in Excel along with the constituent's name and last four of their social security number might be the best method for you. And if you take nothing else away from this presentation today, we want you to at least understand the benefits of electronic filing. We've touched on most of this already, but just as a recap, you receive instant confirmation with a confirmation code that you can record for yourself and provide to your constituents. This system has error reducing automatic calculators to help you avoid math errors. Electronic filing requires that you submit attachments along with your filing. Therefore, it reduces the need for us to go out and request the information and the need for you to send in that information later. It ensures that there's no issues with handwriting and no issues with invalid addresses because it confirms with the United States Postal Service right away. It prevents you from needing to keep paper files. You can easily print the PDF and save it to your network, or you can track that confirmation code in an Excel spreadsheet. There's no need to wait for claims to be sent to our Bureau of Imaging and Document Management for processing. They will be uploaded directly into our system, which also eliminates the chances of documents being lost. If you get a person who comes in last minute to file, you'll still be able to ensure that the submission gets here on time because again, it gets right in the system right away. There is no waiting for that. This system is intuitive enough to identify what schedules need to be completed, so it takes away the guesswork on your end. And then last, but certainly not least, MyPath instantly verifies routing numbers and requires you to double key the bank account number when completing your direct deposit information in an effort to prevent any issues with bank information. So again, lots of ways to ensure things are being done correctly, to ensure the claims aren't getting denied, to ensure the processing isn't getting delayed. So we strongly recommend that you take advantage of this filing option. So at this time, I'll hand it back over to John to go over some helpful tips. But before I do, are there any questions on what we just covered?
This is Erin McAdoo. I guess I don't have my. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, hi. Okay, I had to jump in late here. I'm at Representative Welling's office. I was just wondering. Sorry to interrupt, but will the PowerPoint be available later on?
Yes, so I do believe we are sending a copy of the PowerPoint out to all participants.
Okay, thank you so much.
Also, in addition, I forgot, we are recording this, so you will be able to play it back and view the recording.
Oh, splendid. Even better. Thank you very much.
No problem. I see a hand up from Dora Polk.
Hello. I just wanted to know, so as you guys are going through this, I'm realizing I've done everything wrong on all the forms that I've sent out. So you guys will contact the constituents and let them know, or do I need to just like try to reach out to them?
What do you mean by you've done everything wrong?
Not everything, but I didn't supply proof of age. I didn't know that I needed to do that. I guess I didn't read. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm assuming you're referring to like a paper application that you submitted?
Correct. I've been doing paper applications. I've done about maybe 4 of them.
Okay, so John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we will send out a request for information, asking for that information from your constituent. The problem is, it's going to delay the processing of that actual application, but we will send out the request. Is that right?
So when you do that, am I able to upload it electronically, or since once paper, always paper?
So
No,
you will
can.
get, I'm sorry, do you want to take that, John?
Nope, that's all you. That's all you.
Okay. So when your constituent receives a letter from the department, that letter will have a letter ID in the top right-hand corner. You will be able to go right to the MyPath homepage, and there is a hyperlink that says respond to a letter. Once you click that hyperlink, you'll put in the letter ID and you'll be able to upload that correspondence.
That sounds amazing. Thank you for this.
Very welcome. Are there any other questions before we move on? All right, John, it's all you then.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, so let's go over some recent forms and instruction changes. So there's 2 additional items that have been added to the list of income that is not reported. The first one, which you're all going to be familiar with, is federal stimulus or economic impact payments received by claimants. They're not included in eligibility income for the property tax or rent rebate status. The second is STRIVE program credits, which stands for Senior Tax Reduction Incentive Volunteer Exchange. They're also not included in eligibility income. And the next point is the country code. So the country code field has been changed from a 3-character field to a 2-character field. Now, if your current mailing address is in the United States of America, you're not required to enter a country code. The department will automatically include the correct code for you. However, if you lived at least part of the year in Pennsylvania, you meet the eligibility requirements for the program, and your current mailing address is in another country, you must enter the alphabetic abbreviation for your mailing address country. Now, that list is available under the URL that's on the screen, and you'll also see instructions on page 6 of the PA 1000 instruction booklet. Now, we touched on taxes a little bit earlier with one of the questions, but we want to cover them again in a little bit more detail. So a property owner can only claim actual taxes paid for 2021. Now, there's 3 allowable tax types: county, school district, city, borough, and township taxes. A property owner can't claim any type of nuisance taxes, which they vary depending on where you live. We've seen light pole taxes, fire hydrant taxes, um, and also penalty and interest cannot be included in that total calculation for taxes paid. Also, if there's any additional names that are listed on the tax bills or any of the abbreviations that you see up on this slide, you may need to send in proof of ownership, such as a deed, a will, or some type of trust agreement. All right, because if there's multiple owners on a property, that may affect the amount of the rebate that can be claimed. We also want to touch on some alternative methods to prove that taxes were paid. So normally we ask for copies of receipted tax bills, but there are other documents that we accept. We take mortgage statements showing the amount of real estate taxes paid. We'll also take a signed letter from a tax collector certifying the payment of real estate taxes during the claim year. And we'll also take a receipted copy of a property tax bill, or maybe an owner's association or corporation for residents in a cooperative housing corporation or condominium. Right. So all renters must submit a fully completed rent certificate or rent certificates for each place that that claimant rented and occupied during the claim year. That completed rent certificate is signed by the landlord or an authorized agent to substantiate the amount of rent that they actually paid for the year. If they're unable to obtain a signature, they must provide a fully completed rent certificate filled out by the claimant, along with a completed and notarized occupancy affidavit stating the reason that landlord could not sign the actual claim for or rent certificate. The last note on this form is really important. So the department data captures this form. So everything that you write and enter onto this form, you want to make sure that it is written very clearly if you're paper filing. And again, this is one of the benefits of electronic filing. You would be entering this information while you are electronically filling out that claim form. But it's very important that everything is written out clearly on this for when it is data captured, because if it's not fully completed or if math is incorrect, that claim will suspend for review. So earlier, we also talked about renters needing to have a true landlord-tenant relationship. And if there's insufficient evidence of that landlord-tenant relationship, then that department may ask for a copy of a lease. Now, if the claimant is unable to provide a lease, we will accept a signed and notarized statement from the landlord, along with a copy of a utility bill for the claim year. If they can't provide one of those 2 documents, then ultimately the claim would be denied. All right, housing authorities. So if the renter lives in a property owned by a housing authority, they must still include a completed rent certificate signed by a representative of that authority. If they're unable to obtain a signature, they can provide a letter or a statement from that housing authority that would contain all of the information that you see listed on the screen here. That would include the name and address of the claimant, the name, address, and billing, and federal tax identification number. Basically, what all of this information is it's very similar to what would be included on the rent certificate. So there are some situations where a housing authority will issue out a document that lists out all of this information, and that will be accepted in lieu of the rent certificate. All right, and our last helpful tip is about the best way to send in information. So the very last tile on the MyPath homepage is the submissions tile. Submissions are considered any type of payments, returns, or applications that are sent into us via MyPath. So the submissions tile has the option to respond to a letter, which we just briefly discussed, but this option allows you to submit correspondence directly to the department if a notice is sent out requesting additional information. It also allows you to upload documents directly to that claimant's account using the letter ID from their notice. Now, this gets the information directly into our work queues, and it ensures that it's not lost in the mail. Just like the other features, you can upload multiple documents at a time if need be. Yeah, and this is an excellent option. I mean, it goes directly from the system into the account and directly into one of the work queues to be worked. It eliminates mail completely. You'll also see a link to find a submission. This audience would probably use this option if they were trying to confirm that a claim was properly submitted. You can also delete a claim within 24 hours of submitting it, or you could print a copy on this feature as well. And again, to check the actual rebate status, you would want to select the Where's My Rebate option, or you would call 1-888-PA-TAXES. We actually have a few more helpful tips. So amended claims. Um, let's say that you made a mathematical error while you were filing the claim, and maybe you didn't enter the total taxes paid, or you forgot to include some type of income. Now, if you were filing a personal income tax return, that return would have a bubble that you could mark as amended. This isn't an option on a claim form, but you are allowed to amend the PA 1000. What you would do is if you incorrectly completed one of the claim forms, let's say you submitted it electronically, you could then just file another claim right after it, right, to correct whatever you had entered on the first claim. And that second claim will override the first claim. Now, there are some situations where we would ask you not to amend. So do not submit another claim just to update direct deposit information. If the incorrect direct deposit information is entered on an account, what will happen is that direct deposit will fail, and then we would issue out a paper check to the claimant. Also, don't amend if the claim is denied. If that claim is denied, the claimant will receive a letter, and it's going to give them instructions on how to file with the Board of Appeals, and we're going to discuss that on the next slide. We also don't recommend filing a paper return and then amending via MyPath. Okay, so don't paper file and then try to amend electronically file. The reason being is that if you file that paper amended return in MyPath, it could post before the paper claim actually hits the account. Because of all of the time it takes for a paper return to come into us and then post, if you file that MyPath claim, there's a chance that it will post to the account before the original claim gets to us. Okay, now if a claim is denied, the claimant is going to receive a denial letter, and they have 90 days to appeal. Now that letter is going to contain instructions on how to electronically file an appeal with the Board of Appeals. And you'll see the letter up on the screen here. Electronic appeals are filed through the Board of Appeals website, which is listed on the slide as well. That claimant would have to register for an account in order to petition the Board of Appeals. Now, if you're unable to file an electronic appeal, you could file a petition using the REV-65, which is available on our website. And as you've heard many times today, we strongly recommend using the electronic option. After that petition is filed, that Board of Appeals will have 6 months in order to process the petition and then ultimately issue a judgment. All right, checking a rebate status. So Alicia, do you want to take this?
Sure. It does look like there were two hands raised, and I think they were early on when you were talking. So did you want to take those first?
Absolutely.
So I think Angela Jones was the first one to put her hand up.
See here. All right, Angela.
Hi, I have a question with regards to the rent certificate online. When the monthly amount is different throughout the year, I know you go to the side box and you explain what has happened, but there's no way to override a simple amount times 12 months. Like you can't override what the end result is. So when filling that out, what do we do? Take an average of the 12 months to make it complete? I hope I'm explaining this correctly.
I completely understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So I would have to look at that. I don't know. I know what you're referring to.
So
The way
it
around
seems-
it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
only way I am able to proceed is by taking an average of the 12 months and putting that in the top box times 12 to get the amounts to equal. Is that the correct way of doing it? Because
Yeah,
that
so-
isn't what they're paying every month. They're not paying that average amount. Say 4 months they're paying $400 and then 6 months they're paying $600. Then I'm just taking the average for the 12 times 12 months in order to
does it-
complete it online.
Allow you to enter any information in that side box?
The side box does, but that's just explaining it. But in the actual filling out online, it's an amount times 12 months to get to what that side box amount is. So you kind of have to, like, you can't override the total amount rent paid. It's an amount times 12 months equals the total amount. So the only way to complete it, like if you're handing in the paper, then that's fine. But online, the only way to make that computation work is by saying what the average is for the year, even though that isn't exactly what it is per month.
But you're still able to explain that in the side box.
You're explaining it on the side box, but you're just saying the monthly rent is the average of what the side box is describing. I just wanted making sure that, because that's how I've been doing it, because it was the only really way to complete it. I don't know if anybody else has had this. Or
Yeah,
how
what
they
you're doing
do
is
it.
fine.
That was one of Beverly Taylor. That was one of my questions too, because I've done about 15. When you've paid rent an average of 9 months at one address, and then you paid additional or more rent at another address to make up the 12 months, it doesn't work in the box. It can't.
Exactly.
So on the side boxes, I just explained from 1 to 7, they pay $600, and from July to December, they pay $500. And I was told by the liaison that they'll work that out.
Yeah, and that's not incorrect. So if you're taking, I do have one question for you. Were you saying they were living at 2 separate properties?
Right. I had one gentleman that rented for 6 months, and the other 6 months he went on and bought a home.
Okay, so he would have had to have provided 2 separate rent certificates and filled out
Right.
2 separate rent certificates.
Well, he
Okay.
had one separate rent certificate, and then for the other half of the year, he had a deed. And in the deed, it showed that, when you buy a house, they charge you for all the taxes and everything. You don't get a tax statement. So that verified he paid his taxes and everything, but the rent amounts were different for half of the year.
So I would have to go through the form again myself, but as long as you're entering the total amount divided by 12, it's going to come out to the same figure anyway. So it sounds like what
doesn't.
you're doing.
It definitely doesn't.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have to look at this after the presentation. I know exactly what you're referring to, I think, at least in the first example I understood. But
let me, if you include 2 rent certificates and my path allows you to add a second rent certificate on, So you would just have to complete one for the one location, say for the 3 months, and then a second rent certificate for the second location for the other 3 months. If the rent increased during that time frame, you could fill them both out, two separate rent certificates, one with the 3 month worth rental rate and the other one with the 9 months rental rate. And then it should calculate the amount that is due, or the amount of total rent paid, and then the amount of rebate that would be due the claimant.
But it doesn't. Okay, but I have another question too. On the email, you have to have an email on the electronic version for it to go to next. And I was told you have to put no email at noemail.com. But you didn't say that. Is that true or not?
I've never heard of that.
Well, it will not go to the next screen if you don't have an email in there.
Right. So I'll interject here. Beverly, it will require an email address be entered. That can be your email. Honestly, that's just to send that confirmation code out to you. Again, you can submit it as many applications as you want using the same email address. You don't have to use the constituent's actual email address if they don't have one.
But my question is no email at noemail.com. Is that right? Because that's what I was told to do. And that's what I've done about 15 of these electronic applications. And several people have had no emails, and that's what I put. I don't want the application be rejected because I put wrong information in.
Right. So it wouldn't be rejected for the email address. If it accepts it and allows you to move forward, you can do that. But just know that there is a confirmation code that's getting emailed to that email address. So I don't know where that's going off into IT space somewhere, but if you're entering no email at noemail.com, then the system is trying to send a confirmation to that email address.
Well,
I personally would say,
I've been printing off the application, the whole application, giving it copy to the constituent. And I put in the CTS, I put the whole application in, I data in there into the CTS system, all the information, the copy of the application and the documents that I sent.
and you definitely have the option. You can print right from MyPath right at the very end. I'm sure that that's what you figured out, and it'll print it. You can either save it as a PDF to your desktop, or you can actually print the printer-friendly version of the application. But again, it is more so just you put that email address isn't linking to the account. It's just this is where we're sending the confirmation code to. So I personally would recommend whoever the preparer is, if they have an email address, just use yours. Just put your email address in. It'll email you the confirmation. If you don't want to keep it, you can delete it from your inbox. But again, it's not going to cause that application to get denied or anything.
Okay, thank you. But I don't want to keep holding up everything, but I did have one more question. If a claimant, if you have more than one income, I thought you said you should do the application with the least amount of income. But I always thought we add the income altogether and put it in.
Is it for someone who's married, or is it someone who's
Married.
a roommate?
Married.
Yep. So you're married.
Or even if they're like living together, if they're two adults, not a child, but two adults. I thought you had the income.
So if they're married and living together, then you would include both of their incomes.
Okay.
If it's two people that are just living together that aren't married, you would not include both their incomes.
Would not. Not
Correct.
married, no inclusion. Thank you.
Yeah.
But two can apply. Only one in that household can apply.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, I see two other hands. It looks like Jill Carey, I think, was the next one.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Okay, thank you. Just real quick, because it happened like one time, maybe twice, but say you file electronically, because I love doing that now. I was kind of against it at first because I was so used to the paper application, but the ease of the electronically has won me over. If I have, I submitted electronically for a constituent and didn't realize that my head was not in the right place, that the rent certificate wasn't notarized. The constituent had signed down there and I just had looked at it thinking it had been notarized. And then after I kind of submitted it, I was looking it over and I realized it hadn't been. Is there a way to update after the fact to send in like a notarized rent certificate? Or are they going to have to wait to be rejected? They did have a paper from the housing authority showing what they owe and what they pay and everything, but I don't know if that's going to fly. In years past it has, but I don't think now because the rent certificate wasn't completed. I totally forgot to, I just didn't look at it right. So is there a way to, once you submit on my path, to update with a correct rent certificate, or would we just redo it?
So you wouldn't redo it. So everything's filled out. You attached a paper rent certificate and you filled out the rent certificate.
No, I forgot. I totally forgot to even send the rent certificate.
Okay.
I just sent the housing authority paper.
Okay.
I forgot to send the rent certificate with it.
So there's a few ways that additional information could be sent in. I think the best one for you at this point would be to send it in to be attached with the claim using the DEX 93, or you could wait. You could honestly wait until we send a notice and then just respond back to that notice with the documentation.
I didn't know. I don't want them to get mad.
It's understandable.
I just totally forgot. I don't know what I was thinking. And I realized it after. I'm like, oh, I didn't even send the rent certificate. And I was going to just try to send it real quick after. And that's when I realized the constituent had signed and it wasn't notarized. They just had signed there on their own. But so if I could try the DEX 93, do you think that, I mean, would that work? Would that prevent them from getting them getting a letter in a couple weeks?
Give me 1 minute here.
I hate them to have to wait all this time thinking they're going to be getting their money, and then they get a letter saying because I made a mistake, they have to do something and they're going to have to wait all that time again.
Letter's not going to be generated until the account is actually reviewed. So
if I send it to my liaison, would that work? And could they scan it in? I mean, if I have like the confirmation number to the application.
So they could send it in, but it's about getting it to the right spot where it needs to go.
Right.
So as John said, the DEX 93 is a way for you to be able to submit off of that. The information is online. We can make sure that that is put out on the legislative liaison site for you to use to submit the documentation. That way our processing area can get that information married up with the application. You can also go through the legislative office, and Dawn and Camise can get that information down to the processing area and go that route. But I would recommend using the DEX form. And like I said, we'll make sure that it is out on the legislative site for you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much.
All right. So if that's all the questions, I think we'll continue on. All right, so it looks like we're going to talk about checking your rebate status now. It is important to note that regardless of when you file, the rebate checks will begin being distributed on July 1st of every year. It does take an additional 4 to 6 weeks from the date that your claim is approved for your rebate to be mailed or direct deposited. Obviously, direct deposit happens faster than coming in the mail. Rebates are not distributed prior to July 1st. I believe that 2020 was the only time that we made an exception to this rule. That was in an effort to provide additional support during the height of a pandemic. But changing that date is not something that is solely determined by the Department of Revenue, and there is an entire process that goes into making a change like that. Once the claim has been uploaded into our tax system, a claimant can check the status of their rebate at any time. We do ask that you wait 8 to 10 weeks from the date the claim was mailed to check the status. Obviously, paper applications take time to get loaded into the system. There are several different ways that you can check the status of your rebate. The first one is you can check the status of your rebate directly from the MyPath homepage. So there is a rebates tile. If you click on the Where's My Rebate, you'll need to provide the claim year in question, the applicant's date of birth, and then their social security number. You can also check the status of the property tax rent rebate application by calling our automated toll-free number, which is 1-888-PA-TAXES or 1-888-728-2937. Again, be prepared to provide the social security number, the claim year, and the constituent's date of birth. Also, if a claimant's check was mailed out, but they did not receive it, you must allow 30 days from the mail date before requesting a stop payment. So a stop payment request will take approximately 30 to 60 days before a new check is mailed. If you provided a valid phone number on the application, your constituents really don't even need to call into the department. They will receive an automated call once the application is received and loaded into the system, and then we'll make another automated phone call once it has been approved for payment. It is important to make your constituents aware that the department does make these calls so that they don't think they're being scammed. That is a common misconception. The Department of Revenue also will never ask for any personal information. So if they're saying they get an automated phone call, our calls are strictly pushing information to the claimants, letting them know the status of their application. We're never going to ask them for their social security number or any identifying information. It's truly just an automated message. And then the last thing that we're going to do today is look at the resources that are available to you. So we talked about MyPath a lot and why you should use the new portal. If you have any questions directly related to MyPath, we do have a MyPath chatbot who we named Pathfinder. Pathfinder is trained to answer questions about the portal, but it is not trained to answer taxability related questions. So the chatbot itself can be found in the top right-hand corner of your screen when you are on the MyPath page. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So again, questions related to MyPath, just type it in there and it should generate an answer to you. You also have the ability to email. We have a resource account, which is mypath@pa.gov, or you can call 717-425-2495, and the extension is Path1. There you can speak with a representative who's trained in MyPath. And then in addition, we've created a web page which we update regularly to keep you in the loop for all things MyPath, and that URL is revenue.pa.gov/MyPath information. If you are reaching out to the department for help on MyPath, it is extremely beneficial that you obtain the support ID. This can be found again in the top right-hand corner of the MyPath screen. You'll click on the blue question mark, and then you will select View Support ID. A box will then pop up asking if you're sure you want to grant permission for the representative to view your screen. You'll simply click Yes, and then you'll receive a code. Once permission is granted, our representatives here at the department will be able to remotely view the MyPath session so they can see like where you're getting stuck or where you're having difficulties. As we mentioned a few times, we will be providing a number of handouts that will contain information and assistance with the things that we talked about today. Most of these items I went over earlier in the presentation. They will be uploaded for you to access whenever necessary. But I do want to point out the MyPath user guide here. So this guide is a great place to point your customers for MyPath assistance. It covers anything MyPath, so it's not just tailored to property tax rent rebate, but it does include step-by-step instructions as well as some screenshots to make it easier for them to navigate through the portal, or you, whoever's using the system. Additionally, we always encourage everyone to use the online customer service center. Here you can find thousands of answers to common questions. We do try to update these regularly so that they are helpful for our customers. You can also use this online customer service center to submit a question to the department. So the questions can be general or account specific. It does allow you to include attachments or supporting documents. And then it would be assigned to a department representative who would respond within 72 business hours. And you would get that response. It would come through like a email almost. It's a secure electronic process. Just know that you will need to create an account if you try to submit a question to us that way. And it looks like we're ending a little bit early. I think we were scheduled to go till 12, but are there any more questions for John or I before we wrap this up? Looks like Dora. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry. So you said that we can go in on the MyPath and check the status of an application. If I would have done mine paper form, am I still allowed to check the status on MyPath?
So you can. That's where we were asking to provide that additional time for the paper application to get loaded into the system. If you file electronically, obviously it's loaded right away, so you can start checking the status like the next day. If you mail in the paper application, we would say allow at least 8 to 10 weeks for that to get loaded into the system.
8 to 10 weeks?
Is that what we're quoting right now, John? I believe that's what we were saying.
I'm sorry, I missed how many weeks?
8 to 10 for the paper
Yeah,
applications?
so typically they take 8 to 12 to hit the
Oh,
system.
8 to 12. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely a big difference between using the electronic option.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about the electronic option until like we started this meeting. So thank you for sharing.
Great, I'm glad you learned something new today.
Yes, yes. Thank you guys.
All right, I see a Janet, is it Bernstein?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So I did an application the other day and I accidentally or mistakenly put in the total amount of Social Security minus the Medicare. The applicant noticed my error after she got home, but I'd already mailed it off. This was a paper one. I did check that once it's corrected, she's still going to be getting the same exact amount of rebate. It's all Social Security income, nothing else. I don't think it'll be an issue. Do I need to be worried about it? Is that going to be a problem?
I would let that go. Yeah, so we look at the Social Security information as well. So if we catch it, we'll fix it. And then it shouldn't make a difference. But yeah, I wouldn't amend in that situation because filing a new claim could cause more issues than it would resolve.
Cool. That's what I was hoping to hear. Thanks.
All right, it looks like Angela Jones might have a question.
Okay, I promise this is my last question, but I've been waiting for this to ask these questions, and I've been curious about this one in particular. So I'm with Representative Welby's office. We're the 113th district, which is in Scranton. So I'm going to go back to the supplemental income screen that you had up, which I believe was Scranton, Pittsburgh, and Philly. Okay, so Scranton exited Act 47 after like 3 decades, which in other words was financial distress. Is that what entitled us to the supplemental rebate? Like, so we exited this in 2022. Is that what entitled us to this? And then therefore are we going to lose that? Because a lot of the constituents obviously for years have been getting the supplemental rebate. And I don't even know if that is what entitled us to it, but When you're saying financial distress, I know that's what we exited.
So the reason that Scranton, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia are eligible for this is because in the legislation that enacted the most recent, to the changes back in 2000, and I believe it was 2007, those cities were specifically spelled out in the legislation because of the high burden of taxes on their residents.
Okay, so nothing to do with us exiting out of
No.
Act 47.
Absolutely
Perfect.
nothing to do with it. It's in the
Perfect.
legislation that those cities, because they are the only first and second class cities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Dawn. I think we did have another hand up, but I don't see it any longer. So are there any more questions for us? Okay.
There was,
John.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to say there was still I was going back to this chat. There was still a question about the rent certificate and how they should be entering it if they're paying for different amounts throughout the year. So the online schedule is set up the same way as the original rent certificate was. And what you should do is, if they're paying for different amounts for different months, take the total amount of rent paid, divide it by 12, enter that amount as the amount of rent that they paid per month. So we'll be able to see whatever was entered in the additional supporting box, breaking down how much they receive monthly, but it's still going to come out to the same amount that they paid for the entire year. So I think it was Lydia, I think you commented on Jamie Miller's response. So you were doing it correctly. Just keep doing it the way that you're doing it.
Thank you, John. It looks like Joanna Bortz might have a question.
Thank you. I recently have a constituent who came in, and I've not seen this before. Their proof of rent or the proof of income from the Social Security office actually has parentheses in a sense that it shows an amount they were paid. However, they received a letter that they were overpaid and to pay money back to Social Security office. So they paid that back, and now it's showing as though there's a deficit. So can we file a rebate showing there was no income, or how do we rectify that?
So did they only pay a portion of it back, or they had to pay all of it back?
They paid 11,000 more than they were supposed to back. So their pink box for amount received is actually in parentheses for being owed back to them still. Like that's what their 1099 from Social Security office shows.
So it
is
shows
there
the
a way?
less minus money. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I would do is fill it out the way that, fill it out as if, did they pay all of it back?
Yeah, so I can't enter, like the lowest you can enter would be 0.
Right.
Will
Right,
it let
you
you
would enter
continue
0.
without any proof of income?
It
Even though I
will
have
still let
evidence,
you
continue with zeros?
it should let you still consider as zeros. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you would attach that supporting documentation, definitely include some type of explanation regarding what occurred along with that supporting documentation.
Okay. Thank you. And can you explain what SSI, SSP, SSA differentiation is? Because they're all separate line items online, but then it's one line item when you go to print it out.
So when you're printing it out, whatever the total amount shows up that's what you would be entering on the claim form. So when you're getting that statement, the total amount that's listed on there is what you would be entering. You wouldn't be making any adjustments to the different types of income. But Don, could you elaborate on that at all?
so when you're saying that you're in the online application, you're getting the different boxes to put the amounts in.
Yeah, it asks for SSP, SSI, or SSA separately.
Yeah,
Oh, you're
So-
saying online.
All you have to do is enter the amounts respectively for those. It will end up combining them, but so that we can cross-match that against the data that we have, it just makes it easier on the online application
I see.
to see that differentiated. That way there, if any question comes up, we may not ask it. On the paper form, they all had to be combined because we only have so much room on the paper form.
Okay.
So
Sorry about that. I misunderstood your question.
That's okay. Thank you.
All right, it looks like Aaron, is it McAdale?
Yes, hi there. Okay, my question is, I just got this note from my supervisor that says, when completing a property tax amount rebate form, you should only use ordinary dividends and capital gains as income. Do not use qualifying dividends. I didn't know if, like, I'm just used to seeing the sheets that come in with the pensions and it's, all kind of grouped together. It says they're on the right-hand side. And I was like, what is qualifying dividend? So I don't know if I need to ask that here or just circle back with my office, whatever's best for you guys. Oh, I can't hear you.
John, it looks like you're muted.
Sorry, I was going to say I was going to pull the instructions up for that portion of it, but unless Don has an immediate answer for you.
I will apologize. I was answering some questions online, so I was not listening. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure, yeah. Thank you. I guess I just don't know what qualifying dividends are. Because my supervisor is saying we use ordinary dividends and then capital gains as income, but do not use qualifying dividends. And I don't know what that is.
If it is dividend income that they received during the year,
Uh-huh.
and it was reported on their state and federal tax return, they should be including it. Without any specifics on it, it's very hard to answer that question.
I understand. Okay. I will,
So if you have anything specific on it, you can reach out to the Legislative Affairs Office with the detailed information and we can get you an answer.
okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I do have one more question. This is Dora. A tenant didn't receive their 2020 tax, property tax rebate. Can I still submit a paper form for that?
So not
No.
for 2020.
No?
No, it's past the deadline. It would have been December 31st of 2021.
If I were working with your legislative office and I didn't get the stuff back on time, is that not in the time frame or no? No, it's no.
Yeah, no, if it was submitted after that time frame, they wouldn't accept it.
Okay.
Was there an application filed at all?
There was, and we were waiting for the rent certificate to come back, and I just got that.
If there is an application already filed,
Yeah, that's completely different.
then you can continue to work with the liaison's office. But if there is
Okay.
nothing on file prior to December 31st,
Okay.
then unfortunately under the law, there's nothing we can do.
Okay, good. So I'm still in good standing. Great. Thank you. Sorry, guys.
Gwendolyn Fort just put her hand up.
Hi, a question about the dividends. I've only been doing that only is it safe just to use a 1099? I mean, if their income is reported to the federal government, they have to have a 1099. So the question about the dividends, that the lady was asking, what else would you use besides the 1099 to report income?
The 1099 is what you would use in, I would say, 99.9% of the time.
Right.
There is, and forgive me, in dealing with taxes for many years now, there is always income that may come in from a source that isn't reported to the government. And there are people that will be honest and want to report it, in which case then put it on the respective line. If they say that they receive dividend income or interest income, but they don't have a 1099 for it, you can still include it on the appropriate line on the form, the same as if they have other compensation.
So
So
would that come in almost as an award letter?
in some cases it may. There's 100 different ways the information may come in. So if it is income that they earned during that year, include it in the application and attach the documentation so that our staff can take a look at it.
Okay, all righty, thank you.
All right, so we still have like 10 minutes left. Any last questions?
I promise this will be my last one. But I think it's tailing back on what that gentleman just said. But it's, you know, we're not the judge of people's hearts or anything like that, but we just have to say whatever it, because I'll say, is there any other income? And I'm thinking, okay, there's a really, really nice truck that you just came in, maybe you're borrowing it, but they're showing me like, you know, they make 1,200 a year, you know? And so I'm like, okay, I just, you know, take what they give us and we send it in, you know? Again, not to judge anybody, God knows our hearts, you know, but.
So let me address this one for my team so that they don't feel uncomfortable. You have to remember that this program is based on the income that they earn during the year, not how much money they have. An individual that has $1 million in the bank but earns less than $15,000 in the year would qualify for this program as the legislation is written. So if they're spending down their savings account or other things, if they have $80,000 in the bank, and I'll go through a horrible scenario. They have $80,000 in the bank. They're dying of an ailment, and they decide they want to go spend $50,000 and buy themselves a truck to drive around. If they make less than 15 for renting or less than 35 as a homeowner, they would still qualify for the program. So it's great that you guys are looking at that and checking it and going, and we very much appreciate that, but it is based on the income that they earned. Now, I will state a favor I'll ask. If you know your towns, your communities, your cities more than we do, if you think that someone is lying to you, work with our legislative office and let them know. If you think a person is making $1 million during the year because of side businesses you know that they own, you know, feel free to let us know about that. We'll gladly look into it.
Thank you.
All right, last call, and we'll wrap things up here. All right, well, thank you all for attending today. Dawn, did you have any closing comments before we let them have some time back in their day?
I would just like to thank all of you for attending. I think this has been a great discussion. If there's anything else that the department can help you with, please always feel free to reach out to our legislative liaison's office. If you feel that this program is valuable to yourselves and new staff that are coming on for the legislative offices, we do plan to offer it annually. If there's anything that we can do for you throughout the year in the way of education similar to this, please reach out to us and let us know. Andrew will gladly pass the information on to us, and we will see what we can get scheduled. But thank you very much for attending.
Yeah, I should say that this would have really been helpful when I started. So I think this is something you guys should do moving forward, especially for new people coming on, because I was just filling them out and doing it on my own, and I knew nothing. So this was a great help. Thanks, guys.
And on that note, remember our legislative liaison website has information for you, and then the Department of Revenue's website has a ton of information available to you at any point in time.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.